Hi, I'm Glenn, City Valley Fishing Field Team, COAF Field Team. And this round, it's Thursday, we passed the midweek day. It's February 6th, yes. And well, this round we're going to talk about some fly fishing things. And basically it's answering the mail concerning a follow-on question to a fly fishing, fly rod reel question concerning best fly fishing rod reel combo to get started with, and we posted that way back when. I think we'll put a link in the video. But what happened then is the next questions that we started getting was how do I get started fly tying? And well, we've been mulling this one over for several weeks now. Because, well, what we find is you get a lot of advice from different folks who've been fly tying and fly fishing and all that, and next thing you know, everyone's suggesting the latest and greatest fly tying gear, fly tying vices, etc. And so we're taking the average Joe approach. I want to just get started in fly tying. Well, we'll keep it simple. First thing is how to get started in fly tying? Well, get started fly fishing. What happens then is you'll go fly fishing, you'll be using various fishing flies, and you're purchasing them. Next thing you know, you're going to get the urge to, well, I'd rather maybe tie them myself for various reasons. Pleasure of tying your own fly and crafting it, and the next thing you know, you're catching or fooling a fish out in the wild. That's pretty cool. In other cases, it may be a pattern that's not available in your area, so you want to learn how to tie that one. Or it could be just cheaper to tie your own flies. Or it's starting to become more expensive, I guess, when it comes to tying more flies or purchasing flies at the local fly shop or whatnot. And so there's a lot of things that'll drive you to fly tying, but the first thing is fly fishing. You're out there fishing with flies. And what happens then is you're going to find that there's a particular fishing fly that you use often that catches a lot more of the fish that you are fishing for, and you find that you purchase it more often. And so our first suggestion then is get started fly fishing, get interested, and find out what fishing fly is it that is working for you, and then learn that pattern if you want to get started in fly tying. It doesn't mean you need to go out and buy the latest and greatest fly tying gear, fishing vise, etc. You could start out something simple as some basic fly tying material. There's just different links on the internet telling you what you should get. Be it fly tying thread, vices, etc. But if you really just want to start out simple and economically, because you don't have a lot to spend, what we suggest is picking that one fishing fly that you're going to use often. Hopefully it's a pattern that's fairly easy to tie. Maybe it's a woolly bugger, maybe it's a topwater fly, something that you are using. And at that point, learn that pattern, get the material for it, and then from a tying setup, you can go as what's whatever in your budget. In the past, as needed, if I was out on the road, I'd get my own forceps, and I'd use that as a fly tying vise. Other places, I've used those. Oh, in fact, let me grab it. I've used one of these where you have this alligator clip basically, and you put your hook there and you tie. So whatever you have on hand is really where you can start off with when it comes to a fly tying vise. And so the other stuff you need some tying thread and whatnot, the hooks, but go with that pattern, get the material for it, and then get proficient in tying it. And then what will end up happening is you'll get proficient in tying the fly, you'll have more of those fishing flies, you'll be more likely to fish it more aggressively, a particular fishing fly, because you can tie more, it's readily available to you, versus having to wait for the store to open or having to order it online because you have to purchase it versus tie it yourself. And then after that, you'll find that your proficiency in tying that fly will expand to other patterns. Additionally, if you do have more to spend, then you can start spending more money on the other fly tying gear. But you'll have your basics, which you can look online. I think it's like have your force, or let's go and do it real quick. Bobbin for your fly tying thread. Good pair of scissors. We suggest a whip finish knot or whip finish knot tire, but you don't have to. You could do it also by hand. You don't have to have it, but we like it because it's for threading your bobbin. So bobbin threader. Okay. But at a minimum, you definitely need one of these. So bobbin, scissors. Sometimes you need hackle pliers, depending on if you're going to be tying hackle. And then your fly tying vise. But bottom line, at the bare necessity for some of your patterns, and I've tied them before, is just need a means to hold the thread, another means to hold the hook, and then scissors to cut your thread. And after that, everything else kind of falls in place. Other things that you have, you can get the fancy stuff, but we use a lot of crazy glue, super glue for our gluing. And then we do have other kind of UV glue, but ones for quick ones are these 5-second fix UV glue. Comes with its light. You get them for like $5 at CVS. We do have a more fancier version, but we tend not to use this one as much because the other one just a lot quicker to use. Get your basic material, but the key is not to spend a lot of money initially, even if you do have a lot of funds to pay for. What ends up happening is if you spend a lot of money up front and then it turns out later you don't even want to tie anymore, or you don't have the time to tie, then you just wasted your money. What we did was from a progression in fly tying vises. The first one we bought was an old cheap, way back when, Bass Pro Shops, $9 kit. Came with a bunch of other material, but was this very cheap vise that you clamped onto a table. It's like pressed sheet metal, bent, and then it had a clamp that clamped onto the table, and then the vise. I got rid of it years ago for whatever reason. Kind of wish I still had it because that'd be a good one just to have. But here, we'll show you some fly tying vises, how our progression went throughout the years. Okay, so after we had that $9 kit one, pressed sheet metal and vise, we moved on to this one, which came to I think this one came out to like $15 or so back then. Made in India. It's clamped onto a table, and you can adjust it. Has various, it's got a deal here. Didn't spend much at all, under $20. I think it was $15 is what we paid for this thing. I think maybe you can get them for about the same price anyways. It's made in India. It's not nothing fancy. It's got some heft to it, but this did a lot for us for many years. And the only reason why we got another one was because we had a gift card and wanted to try one of these rotary vises. So let's go grab that one. Okay, so this one, actually this one's clamped also. But we ended up taking it off and buying a separate pedestal for it. And this one actually came in at an angle, but we straightened it out and kind of found out that you could rotate it, and it was our pseudo rotary one. I think we paid $29 for this one. Another $10-15 I think for the pedestal. It's pretty heavy, and we used this for many years. Added this little arm and all that, and then we retired it and picked up one of these peak tying vises. This is the one that we last purchased in about maybe 5-10 years ago, and we don't plan on buying any more. We're good with this one. It's heavy, it's got a pedestal, and we've been very happy with this one. This one we probably paid about $30, had the $10, $15 pedestal, so this one we paid about $150. Now, the one we just showed before this one, we mainly use that one for when we're in a hurry and we're tying different jigs and whatnot. We'll just leave that aside. This one, we ended up getting one of these tube tying, fly tube whatever kits, where it's an attachment right here. It's got an attachment, and you actually just clamp it into the vise itself. And this kind of pretty much sits aside until we're ready to use it for whatever reason for those tube flies. Okay. And then here is the peak tying vise. It's a rotary, and we've been pretty happy with this baby. It's got a little arm, it's got a heavy pedestal. Didn't plan on buying any one after this one. You can probably buy some other ones, better ones, whatnot, but it does what we were looking for. In fact, if we bought that one first, we probably wouldn't have gotten the other ones, but then we probably wouldn't have gotten the fly tying either, because there was a good time period where we didn't tie our own flies. We got the initial fly tying vise for like $9, and about 5-10 years passed by before we got the next fly tying vise, and in between there, tied very minimally, only as needed. Meaning I needed another popper fly is basically what I did, or I was making some jigs for saltwater fishing. And shifted over to the next one after that, which is this one. And we kept this one for many years as well, about another 5-10 years, and we actually did a lot of tying on this one. And then we ended up moving on to the pedal space one that we use for making those tube flies now. And the only reason why we moved from that tube fly one to the peak tying vise was one day we're at I think it was at the Bass Pro Shops over there, Garland, over there by Lake Ray Hubbard, just over the, what is it, Highway 30 and whatnot. We were over there one day getting some material, and in the fishing shop, fly fishing shop, that's what they were using for demoing some of the fly tying. And when we played around with it, we're like, this is a pretty good vise. So we stuck with it and kind of put some money aside, good year or two before we decided to finally purchase it, when we saw it that it wasn't going to go any lower than the $150 that we had been paying for. I think we watched it for a good 1 to 2 years and never saw the price really change. So ended up purchasing it once we had enough dollars saved on the side to go pick it up, and ever since then never even worried about getting another fly tying vise. So how to get started in fly tying: 1, start fly fishing. 2, since you started fly fishing, you'll find that there's a certain fishing fly that you use often. Learn to tie that fishing fly. For whatever reason. Is it because you want to save some money? Is it because you want the pleasure of catching a fish for something that you caught or made, a fishing fly that you made and you crafted, and now you get the extra pleasure of fooling a fish with your craftsmanship? Or is it just another hobby that you want to try, and it's you know, you find some pleasure in that? Well, whatever the reason, have that reason, have that passion, and you'll find that you'll stick with it. It may have some gaps in time between when you first started to when you pick it up again, but that's the way it is. I guess our big lesson learned is don't ever get rid of anything that you bought related to fly tying, because eventually when you do come back to it, you're going to wish you had it. And in fact, right now I'm wishing I had that little $9 one from way back when. I think we sold it at a garage sale one day, on a whim too. But I still would like that. I probably would put it off to the side with the other ones and use that when I'm making some other kind of fly or some other pattern. So, alright, so let's go ahead and recap basic tools and then close it out. Alright, so basic tools, the bare minimum. Have a something to hold your thread, and this is a Bob Wright something bobbin. I think it's like maybe $20, $25. Got it on a gift card as well. So, but you can pick up one of these things right here. for $1.99, $2.99. Basically, you want something to hold the thread, and we've seen it in fact where you can make one out of coat hanger if need be. If you don't have any funds, you can just craft it yourself. But so bare minimum, have something to hold your thread so you can tie. What we find is the big plus in this is being able to control the thread as you put it on there. You have a little bit more line control. If you just went straight the thread, you can do it by hand. Yes, you can do that, but that's the reason why we say as a bare minimum have that bobbin. Good pair of scissors. Good thing about this one, I think this was like $7.99 at Cabela's, is there's other other scissors you can purchase fairly cheap. You know, the scissor ones that you get you know, for craft stores and your school supplies. But what we find is the key to a good pair of scissors for fly tying is what we find is you can sharpen it, as well as when it is sharp, you can definitely snip with the tips and the leading edge or point of the fishing or of the scissor, and that helps in cleaning up the fly and trimming it. You have that line or control with the tip to be accurate in your cuts and trimming. So that's the reason why we like using fly tying scissors. And so with the vise and those two items, you should be good to go, along with some glues. We said the super glue as well as the UV glue, LED light and everything that's built in. There's that. If you're tying something that deals with hackle and having to wrap hackle, get some hackle pliers. That's also fairly cheap, like $1.99. You can get them typically. Right. Nice to haves. You can learn to do a whip finish using your fingers, or you can use a whip finish tool. We do both, depending on what we're doing, but it's a nice to have. Another nice to have, but we like it because our eyes are getting shot, is the bobbin threader. So you get a little wire that you stick through the bobbin tube, and you can pull your line or thread through, and you're good to go. All right, so I think that's all you need really to get started fly tying, other than material. Material wise, personal start for us was we started tying a foam spider to replace the brim getter that we paid. I think it was like $3, $4 back then, and we kept losing. And after we lost about 3 or 4, decided I need to go and tie them myself, because it got really expensive. Especially back then, I think it was $2.25 an hour for minimum wage. So, man, I lost a lot of flies back then for minimum wage hourly pay. So, simple pattern, because it was just a foam body and rubber legs and some thread and the hook. Learned to tie that one well. Learned to get pretty proficient there. Where we got really proficient was when we started pursuing trout and some of the different patterns that we needed for the trout. We had to basically match the pattern, and there were some fishing flies that we tended to buy because it was easier to get a hold of those, as well as they were better than what I could tie. In other cases, I learned to tie them myself because they couldn't be purchased anywhere. It was just a local variant that, like the near deer, it's a local variant that we picked up from one of the fishing guides here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, which has been a good fish getter for us. And then from there, it spawned on to different fishing flies that I have worked for trout. So bass, bluegill, the patterns were much more simpler to tie. And we stayed with that simplicity. When we moved on to trout fishing, we got a little bit more complexity in the patterns we were tying. All right, so that's all for now. I hope this helped give you an idea as to how to get started fly tying. Start fly fishing. Find the fishing fly that you are using the most often. Learn that pattern. Get the basic material for it, and get proficient at tying that pattern. You'll find that you'll stick with fly tying more when you're using and enjoying fishing with a fly that you've tied. versus trying to get really complex and tying a pattern and it's one that's not catching fish for you. So that's why we suggest that. Later on you can expand as the trout species or the fish species that you're pursuing. If the complexity of the pattern goes with that, you're going to find that you're going to start pursuing your fly tying ability a little bit more aggressively. Also, it's always good. There's some opportunities to pick up some fly tying free classes at the various fishing venues here. The Cabela's every Wednesday has something going on with the Dallas fly fishers. There's several fly fishing shops. Orvis, as well as I think Backwoods and Fort Worth, offer free classes. So there's always the opportunity to go out there and learn and start fly tying. You don't have to spend a lot initially. You can definitely start out at the budget that you can afford. The key is to stay with it and stick with it. And what we find is you'll stay with fly tying a lot more when you're using a pattern that catches fish. And two, if you do spend a lot, you get frustrated. You're going to kind of get bummed out that fly tying gear is going to be sitting there gathering dust. But even then, if you do take a break, don't get rid of it. Hold on to it, because maybe some years later you'll pick it up again and find that enjoyment again. All right, so I hope that helped. If you do have any questions, definitely send it to us in the comments or email. All for now. Until next time, we'll catch y'all later, and good luck and good fishing. Alrighty, and if you like what we're doing, do like and subscribe. COAF Field Team, City Bound Fishing Field Team, and I'm Glenn.